Welcome to the podcast. Chris Graham and Ron Mullins. We're going to talk some NASCAR today as the Cup Series. We're now in April and looking forward to in a couple weeks, actually about 8 or 9 days. We've got Bristol weekend coming up. But first, let's go back to Martinsville, Rod, and a Virginia native, Denny Hamlin, getting his first win in a while, gets the win at Martinsville. How did he do it? What was the key to Hamlin to get the win down there?
I think he just kept on pushing and pushing and pushing. That's what he did because, he hadn't had a victory at Martinsville in almost 10 years. I think 11 years, I think is what it was, 10 or 11 years. And so, it was rough going there for him for a while. We saw a lot of things happen during the race on Sunday. One of the things that I took notice of that kind of caught me off guard was the changing of the power packs in some of the Penske cars. Some of the Penske cars, the Wood brothers, for example, they had problems of where they lost all power in their cars. They couldn't figure what was going on. Something was their battery, the amperage was going down, and they had to switch out battery packs. And fortunately, they come in about a briefcase size to where you can just go and you can take them out, plug them back in. And I think some of the teams went through as many as two of them before they were able to finally finish the race. But getting back to Denny Hamlin, the situation was Denny Hamlin needed this win. He'd been kind of quiet, had some success last year at some of the tracks, faltered in the very end, going up before championship for a weekend. And now the rumor has already started, or at least I guess speculation per se, is he championship four material? I think it's a little bit too early to call on that, but he did it through some just good old fashioned racing. Um, he should be used to, especially on driving on a short track. And Martinsville is that short track, and what a great place for him to get a win again.
Take us into who else had good runs in your opinion this weekend? I think Bubba Wallace had another strong run. Who else had some
Well,
good turns on the track?
yeah, that's the one I really want to talk about. I mean, there were some other people that had some good turns on the track and everything this past weekend, but I really have to brag on Bubba Wallace. It was brought up to me. We were kind of talking. It was almost as if Bubba Wallace has matured and taken another step. He's not one of these people that we're used to him just going and just outright being saying what it's on his mind, saying whatever comes to his tongue and just saying it. He was more thoughtful, more carefully, I guess, orchestrated in how he was going to talk about it. He had a car that could win, but it just wasn't enough for him to get up to the front of the pack. He wanted to try to challenge Hamlin at the end of it. But, I was really happy with the way that he came across to the media. He said, hey, Toyota, top three cars in there and stuff. He said, hell of a day for Toyota, which it was. And so, you've got to commend him. I think the wins are going to be there. Something's going to happen here soon. It could be this weekend at Darlington. It could be at Bristol. Bristol is one of his good tracks that he's raced well on before in some other circuits. But we'll just have to wait and see about Bubba Wallace. To me, I was just really happy with him. I think the biggest disappointment though this weekend was Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott had a car, was leading a number of laps, had a chance, but just the car just wasn't there at the very end. And so, he loses out on a chance at winning at Martinsville. But, it was a good short track classic battle. And we're getting to a track this week that has well, at least points to the signs of having a good sized mile and a half track. But it's more like short track racing when you go to Darlington. And then, of course, we'll have Bristol coming up uh, after that, and that'll be another interesting ride around the last great Coliseum at Bristol.
All right, let's go into the penalty box here. I guess we can say penalties from the NASCAR weekend, both Xfinity Series and the Cup Series.
Well, Eric Jones, of course, was disqualified at the end of the race. He finished dead last because things that had been done, height requirements, and they felt like it had been played with, and so he was penalized. I think the big thing that happened was the melee and the just brouhaha that happened at the end of the Xfinity race on Saturday. And Sammy Smith, the driver in the Xfinity series, was fined 50 driver points, $25,000 for causing a last lap crash in the Xfinity race. Jeb Burton also and Taylor Gray were both fined $5,000 for going into the infield care center to confront each other, of all places, after and other drivers after the race. They went in to try to, I guess go in there and tell some people how they really felt about things. You had a Trackhouse Racing Jackman and tire changer. Two of them, as a matter of fact, they've been suspended for the next two races as a result of the right rear failing and falling off of Shane Van Gisbergen's car during the cycle of green flag pit stops. And so the troubles continue for Shane Van Gisbergen already in this 2025 season. And last but not least, missing lug nut. One of those on the Xfinity series, a $5,000 fine was assessed for having a missing lug nut at the end of the Xfinity race. And the number 71 Craftsman Truck Series team for Spire Motorsports was issued a $2,500 fine for missing a lug nut after their race. So for the big guys, really nothing major out of this except for the fact of the problem about the tire, the right end falling off there, the right wheel falling off on Shane Van Gisbergen's car, and Eric Jones in the Cup Series. That's about the two big penalties that came out of that.
All right, so now from penalties to the courtroom, we do so much on the podcast here each week about the legal cases involving NASCAR. I feel like Judge Wapner here with the People's Court, talking about now. This is Legacy Motor Club filed a lawsuit this week against Rick Ware Racing over their agreement over a charter sale, a charter purchase. What's going on here?
Well, all these things about the jockeying for charters and so forth. Uh, this was something that was going on in the off season, right up to the very end, right before they go to Daytona. And according to this Legacy Motor Club, they fired. Well, they filed a lawsuit rather on Tuesday, and it wasn't an April Fool's joke either. To Rick Ware Racing is one of the two NASCAR Cup Series teams clash over a charter purchase that's gone awry. Legacy said that the teams had met on January the 6th to strike a deal, and they signed it on March 3rd after agreeing on payment terms. Get this. The charters, they don't know exactly what the numbers were, but some of the charters were going for values of up to $40 million. That's what blows my mind out of this. And now Legacy claims that Rick Ware Racing has cold feet and they're wanting to back out of the whole thing. But then a follow up said that both of them have agreed not to speak publicly about this. But according to what's going on around this, the dispute centers around the timing of when the charters would be transferred from RWR to Legacy, which is owned by seven-time Cup champion Jimmy Johnson. And Rick Ware Racing is said to be under the impression the agreement would go into effect for the 2027 season, but Legacy changed the year to 2026 without communicating to team owner Rick Ware or other representatives it had done so. So to me, it's a cut and dry case right there. Somebody wasn't listening. Somebody decides they want to go and institute it by next year when the agreement called for 2027. Somebody, yeah, definitely. I can see why somebody would have cold feet at this point.
Some more off the track news. We all remember how last year Kyle Larson attempted to do the double, the Indianapolis 500, the Coca Cola 600 on the same day. Weather did not cooperate at either location, unfortunately, and after weeks of preparation, months of preparation, Larson, even though and he flew down from Indy to Charlotte for the second race, it just didn't work out. He's going to try it again, and Amazon Prime is involved.
Yeah, they've got sponsorship on this car. I was looking at the car and the specs and everything, and looking at it, looks nice. Of course, HendrickCars.com is going to be also sponsoring it. But that's not just the only reason Prime Video or Amazon Prime is going to be on the car. They have greenlit a feature-length documentary chronicling Kyle Larson's quest to compete in the two marquee races on the same day. So it's going to be a big deal. We're going to finally see behind the scenes. We've had it described to us before of how Tony Stewart and how Robbie Gordon and some of these other drivers have you know, got in a helicopter, go to the airport, fly out on a jet. I mean, bust it getting to Charlotte on the jet and so forth, flying around thunderstorms, finally to arrive in Charlotte and then either get there for the start of the race if they're lucky or get there about maybe about a quarter of the way through. For Kyle Larson last year, it didn't work out at all because he had a rain delay at Indy, he had a rain delay at Charlotte, and then when he got there and finally got everything strapped on, was ready to climb into the chair, they had reached the halfway point, and NASCAR called the race, and that was what I think just devastated Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson felt that he had the car that could compete there at the Coke 600 last year. And I think from that point on, that's when the season went downhill for Kyle Larson. We saw some sparkles here and there, some good things happening, but it just did not end up happening for him for a championship season last year. So he's going to try it again, see if he can conquer it. I think he finished what 10th or 13th, something like that last year. He finished somewhere in the top 20. But Kyle Larson definitely made a splash last year at Indianapolis. He's hoping to do so at both tracks this time around.
Fingers crossed that the weather. I mean, it's all it takes. He's doing everything else you need to do to get ready. And it's for the fans out there. I think this movie, this documentary that will come out, I'm sure months later, will really chronicle just how much work goes into this. It's more than just getting in the car on race day and then flying to the other race and getting in that car, which is a lot as it is. And then driving for 1,100 miles, it's I mean weeks and months of
Well,
preparation. Because you've got to, I mean, if you're a NASCAR driver, a full-time NASCAR driver, you've also got to, acclimate yourself to driving a different kind of car, and that's not as easy as it may sound to some people.
well, if anybody out there, of course, I know there's probably some people out there, bigger race fans or bigger, race speculators and spectators more than I am. But there's a difference when you get in that Indy car. All your gears are up on. You don't do anything with your foot except for change. You're just sitting there in the cockpit and you change gears and everything else up here on the steering wheel where it's at. NASCAR, completely different. It's like the old time cars altogether. You've got the clutch, you've got the brake, and then you've got the gas. And some of them very seldom ever use that clutch anymore because they've gone to that more of an automatic type of transmission. But I know what they're talking about because I know that the Ford truck that I have has got that. You don't even have to have the clutch in it, but you can change gear on the stick shift is what you can do. And and so NASCAR is learning how to do that sort of thing. It's moved things ahead a little bit for them, but IndyCar is a completely different bird altogether. And I mean, it's you're going almost 230, 230, 240 miles an hour if you're lucky enough. We may see speeds of well over 230 this time around for qualifying. But yeah, it's a different bird altogether. And I think Kyle Larson has alluded to that and talked about it and said, it's we're going from one car to another car, but he just loves the thrill of speed. That's what he loves. He loves the enjoyment of being behind the wheel and just driving and trying to go out and dominate a race.
It'd be hard to do what he's doing if you weren't talking about the same day. It'd be hard to do it Saturday, Sunday. It'd be hard to do it Sunday, Sunday the next week. I mean, because they're different cars. Then you got the stamina factor. The 600
Yeah.
is the longest race in NASCAR season. It's challenging if that's all you're doing that day. The Indy 500 challenging for its own
Yeah.
reasons. So man, oh man, I mean, and it's only been done a few times. We definitely are rooting for him. We know he's preparing to do this, and he did this last year. Did not get to enjoy the results of all that hard work, and that maybe when you talked Rod about how his season sort of went downhill after that. I mean, all the mental energy that goes into that, and then not to have any fulfillment with being able to do that thing you prepared for so long. There's a letdown that may have factored into his performance late in the season in NASCAR.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think you could see the disappointment almost immediately when they had the camera on him. When Fox had their coverage and they had the camera right there and they looked at him and the look of okay, I'm here. And then just as he's getting ready to make his way toward the pits and get into the car, this look of just sheer disappointment came across his face. And you could see that. I mean, he had a lot to be thankful for that day for such a great performance in the Indy 500. And by the way, the Coke 600 is the longest race in all of racing, not just NASCAR, but it's the longest race altogether. And some of these people have wondered why in the world has NASCAR done something like this? Why do they even have 600 miles? It was all done because of a marketing standpoint. They wanted the 600 to stand out more so than just a standard 500 lap race. And the Coke 600, once you get past the 500 laps, it's not so bad. But then the final 100 laps, that's what is so grueling because cars start breaking down. Things start changing on a car. You either have the car just right, or it's going to go to pot immediately after you turn lap 501. Something's going to happen to it. So you've got to be a good manager of your car. Your pit crew has to be on top of things. They have to monitor all of this telemetry coming in to give them an idea of what could possibly go wrong. But yeah, Kyle Larson, I'm telling you, that was a big, I think, exclamation point, almost a question mark, but an exclamation point on his season. It was like, we didn't get a chance to see him even drive, even go out and do anything for this race. And we didn't. And I think it kind of cost him the rest of the season on down the line because he didn't get that taste of the Coke 600 last year.
All right, that's May 25th, and we'll of course keep folks updated. We'll talk about this a lot more as we get ready and get closer to May 25th. All right, so this weekend, Darlington, it's Throwback Weekend. Rod, what can we look forward to this weekend with Darlington and NASCAR Cup Series?
Well, it's throwback weekend at Darlington. It's always a fun time. Darlington always goes and throws out some of the most unique um, tributes and color schemes that they'll have for different cars. The Wood Brothers is going back, I think, to a Formula, I think a Formula car, Formula GT car, something like that. But they're going away from their typical red and white colors, is what they've had on there normally during the season. You've got so many other tributes that they're going to be having. If I'm not mistaken, I think Austin Dillon is supposed to have a unique color scheme this coming weekend at Darlington. So we'll have to see what that one is. But the one that really caught my attention, and I forget the driver right offhand, but he's in the Xfinity series, it is getting rave reviews and said if anybody's going to go and vote for the best recreation and color scheme, it would have to be the car that's going to look like the old Kodak film car. And they have, I think it's Visual Pack as the sponsor, but it looks almost identical, right down to the very stripes and the very colors that's on that car. And that's the first tribute I've seen to Ernie Irvin and the Morgan McClure team, and also Sterling Marlin in there as well. So we get a chance to see some of these very colorful cars, and also we get a chance to maybe see Clint Boyer or Kevin Harvick with, sort of the porn mustache, if you want to call it that, for the 70s, however they want to throw it in there. Also for the action, the racing action, and so forth. We'll see some different fashions, but more importantly, we will probably see um, I think maybe a first time winner coming out of this one. We might see a first time winner or one that has been very close to winning here in the last couple of weeks, or also maybe in the last year. This is a 1.366 mile track. It's a one of a kind track in Darlington. It's the Lady in Black. Saw a quote on here before we got on earlier, an old interview with Kyle Petty, and he says, as far as I'm concerned, I hate this track. He said, I hate to just go ahead, tear up all the infield and stuff, and make this into a big pond and make it for bass fishing competition. That's what he thought of Darlington. Say the same thing about Bristol too. That's pretty much what they ought to do. But you're going to the two most difficult tracks, I think, that's on the circuit, and that's Darlington, because once you think that you are clear at Darlington coming out of one of the turns, uh, the pavement can just go and all of a grab a hold of you and slap you to the wall, and that's that Darlington kiss that everybody always talks about, of kissing the lady in black. And it's a tough hit. When you take a hit at Darlington, it's tough, and they've reconfigured it here in the last, oh, I would say 20 or 25 years. And so, hey, it's a challenging track any way you go with it. And I've already made a call. It wouldn't be surprising to see Bubba Wallace maybe in the winner's circle this time around. We'll just have to wait and see. This is a track that he loves to kind of challenge himself, and it's to him the closest thing to having a short mid-sized track, if you want to call it that. So we might see Bubba Wallace in the winner's circle. Who knows? Joey Logano might even be there, and Joey Logano's having a terrible season so far, and he happens to be, I think, one of the leaders right now at this point of Darlington wins and so forth. Pulled off a big win here a couple of years ago by bumping William Byron at the very end of the race, and Jeff Gordon was none too happy about it from the Hendrick camp over Joey Logano's driving style. So we'll just have to wait and see who survives the carnage at Darlington this coming weekend.
All right, so Darlington this weekend. We know we've got Rod getting ready to head down to Bristol for the following weekend
Right.
of NASCAR. So I got to make sure to get myself back on schedule so we can get the podcast out and let you get down the road there. And we'll have a great time talking next week and getting ready for, well, we're recapping Darlington, then getting ready for Bristol. Well, in the meantime, Rod, as always, man, thank you for your time and your insight.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks.